right, everyone. Welcome back to the Canadian Real Estate Channel. As always, I'm your host, Matt McKeever, another Wednesday Real Estate Roundtable. I hope you guys have been enjoying them so far. I think this is episode number 7, if I'm not mistaken. And kind of a lighter crowd tonight, but we're going to be talking lots about the Ottawa real estate market because we've got two local investors there. So I'm going to bring on Michael first. Hey, Michael, how are you doing?
Good, Matt. How are you?
Good. So just kind of break down for everyone, what's your background? What's your experience with real estate investing?
Well, it started off a long time ago. My dad's a realtor here in Ottawa. I've been a realtor for 18 years, so I grew up going to open houses, learning that kind of stuff. Read Rich Dad Poor Dad, just dove straight in. So I actually bought a 9-plex and a land development project just on the Quebec side. And then I became an investor-focused realtor here in Ottawa, and I'm still looking for property myself and just been helping out investors buying property, kind of Brockville, Smiths Falls, and all the way to Ottawa. So I've just been learning and loving it.
All right, awesome. Well, if anyone's got any questions, jump in the comment section. As always, we're happy to field your questions. And again, hit us up on any like Quebec real estate questions because it sounds like, Michael, you've got some experience there as well
absolutely.
as anything going on in Ontario or anything with Ottawa specifically as well.
Yeah, I'm helping my dad manage a few properties, getting into that stuff, but don't own any properties here in Ottawa just yet. But definitely the next step.
All right. And next we've got James. Hey, James, how are you doing?
Good, Matt, man. How you doing?
Good. Glad to have you here. And if you don't mind, just break down for people, what's your background with real estate? What's your exposure? All that good stuff.
Yeah, man. Appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me, man. Great channel. It's always been one of my kind of check off my bucket list to get on this channel, man. So it looks like we made it, man. So yeah, man. Been doing real estate for about close to about 4 or 5 years now. Kind of dived into the condo market and quickly realized that was a little too passive for me. So wanted to be more hands-on. So I kind of went into the multifamily space. I found this was something that was pretty cool, got me closer to my goals, and started off in the Ottawa market, kind of branched off just in the surrounding areas, and just never looked back since, man.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited, and let's just kind of talk about Ottawa, seeing how both of you guys are from the Ottawa market right now. So feel free, either of you can jump in here, but what's some maybe basics for someone that's maybe new to real estate investing, getting started in Ottawa, which they know about it? Is there certain neighborhoods you guys find yourself attracted to or clients of yours from a real estate investing perspective? Are there any strategies that are particularly, popular or profitable when it comes to Ottawa? For example, I know back in the day, duplex conversions were huge in Hamilton, and essentially any investor from Hamilton area was always doing duplex conversions. What are you guys seeing these days in Ottawa?
Want to go first, James?
Yeah, I'll take that. So Ottawa's a great market. I mean, just like Hamilton, duplex conversions were a good thing, adding some secondary dwelling units to some of the properties. But I think a lot of people are kind of trying to dive into the multifamily space. But Ottawa is probably not a market that people dive in right away because, I mean, people always want to kind of get into the multifamily somewhere close to where they want to be, somewhere close they can go see and touch the property. But then you quickly see and realize that, maybe the numbers might make sense if I kind of just stepped out just a little bit further than the Ottawa market. And then you realize what much you can get buck for your buying. So more buck for your buying when you kind of step outside the market. But Ottawa, I think it's more relatively to somebody who kind of knows exactly what you can get into it, not necessarily cash flow heavy because it's obviously not a secondary market. But I think Ottawa's it's got some good fundamentals in economics in regards to more of a long-term play than a cash flow perspective.
Yeah, just I can jump in here just on James there. Like if you're new to Canada or you don't know much about Ottawa, it's a super heavy government town. So probably the majority of people that are looking to live in Ottawa, one of their goals is to get a government position because, very stable positions if you're into that kind of 9-to-5 lifestyle. And it supports and always holds up the Ottawa market. So that's something that's really cool about that. And we also are connected right to Gatineau. So the kind of metropolitan area is close to about 1.5 million. So great economics. You're talking about kind of neighborhoods and stuff like that. There's a lot of gentrifying areas in Ottawa. Vanier and Beechwood are some of those. Same with Carlington. So if people are looking to kind of buy on one of the good streets, you really got to get familiar with the streets. It comes down that close. Like if you're on one side of the street, you could have properties gentrifying, new triplexes going up, new condominium projects. But a lot of development goes on in Ottawa. Same with a lot of Airbnb. It's a really touristy town. right? You got Parliament, you got the canal, all that. So if you're looking for cash flow, trying Airbnb. I know some people do a lot of like student rentals because we have 2 universities and a college. And then, yeah, like James said, hopping in multifamily right down the 401 as you kind of exit Ottawa, you can get a lot of pretty good deals.
Got it. And so just touching upon Airbnb, does Ottawa have any rules, regulations around being a landlord or specifically with short-term rentals?
Go ahead, man.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't looked too much into it. I know that it's popular, but I think you do have to get an Airbnb license and it has to be allowed. It's not too strict right now, though. I think they're kind of thinking about it, but we just got the new mayor like everyone else did. So I think they're probably going to hold off a little bit if they are going to implement any kind of Airbnb policy. But I actually don't know exactly how it works. But I know there's a ton of Airbnbs available for Ottawa, and that's what a lot of investors are looking to use to get into it.
Yeah, just to add a little bit to that is I know definitely Airbnb is popular, especially near the universities and the colleges and so forth. So yeah, I know you certainly do have to have that license as well. Once you get that license, I think you can start going to the Airbnb perspective into kind of getting to the cash flow perspective of what you want to get into for cash flow investments.
Got it. And so would you guys mind maybe describing like what would be an exciting opportunity for you these days in Ottawa or surrounding markets?
Yeah, man. So some of the exciting opportunities that we're seeing, especially around, kind of like in the Ottawa, is taking advantage of some of these gentrifying areas that are just coming up, right? So these are places that are really quickly growing and trying to be to these areas where they can actually keep up because, entry points from those areas seem to be a little bit more reasonable now. These are areas where you could find opportunity. It doesn't have to be super crazy expensive. Some of the cap rates are not going to be as low as the ones that you could see, in other popular areas of Ottawa. So I think it's something where you can just kind of go into the growth of the city. Also, what you can also expect is some of these areas that we thought were just out of town and too far, man. Like the city is growing so fast that you get a good opportunity to find a spot there in the next couple of years or so. I think the city is going to find you there. And also just kind of going with where, the city has, because Ottawa is not a small city, but it has so much intensification for residency coming up. So I think, any place that you can really see where, access to transit or anything like that, you can really, hone in on that and just expect the city to kind of grow towards you. So that's why I see some opportunities.
And just to follow up on that, James, when you're talking about like gentrifying neighborhoods, do you mind maybe just jumping into one and kind of describing like what's kind of a typical project look like? And for example, back when I was actively investing in East London, the old East Village was one of my favorite neighborhoods. And that was essentially like an older part of town. We're often dealing with like 100-plus-year-old brick buildings, and going in, they've often been subdivided already, or they're big old houses that have the opportunity to be subdivided. And that would be kind of the niche we were carving out. What are some opportunities you're kind of seeing in some of these gentrifying neighborhoods?
Yeah, great, man. So just like Matt said, a place like Vanier, so you got a bit of northern Vanier and southern Vanier. So northern is kind of closer to the Beechwood area. So this is a place what is more like a C neighborhood back in the day, or even some of them might be D neighborhoods. But these are places you're literally about 5-10 minutes away from downtown. But now you got to realize that the city is pumping in so much resources in those areas, and that's just a matter of time until it catches on. So I think those are some of the areas that you can actually honk in. Just be patient with it, do what you have to do, clean your place up, find a property and hone in on that. So those are some of the areas that you could find in Ottawa. Even just in the outskirts right now, if you go kind of closer to about 45 minutes towards along the 401, the area is just growing that much further, and having access to that transit is just key, man. So those are some of the places that I think there's this good opportunity to find. So from a multifamily perspective, in terms of those, I mean, there's a few, 4-plexes, 6-plexes that are there. And what I'm seeing, I'm kind of dabbing into the land development perspective as well, is what I'm seeing. There's a lot of plays where, people are getting to land assemble these projects where they get duplexes, triplexes, and they're honing in that they'll buy the whole lot. And going to the perspective of possibly putting up a whole new bigger property on that.
Got it. And yeah, Michael, what are you kind of seeing as far as opportunities or specific neighborhoods in Ottawa?
Yeah, well, one thing, everyone in Ottawa knows it, but I'm not sure if the other people in Canada know it, but the transit's terrible. Like Ottawa transit's like absolute completely garbage. We have bus routes. They took out some of the major bus routes about 10 years ago to start building a light rail system. So the bus rail has been pretty bad for about 10 years because they took out a lot of the major downtown transit ways. They built the light rail, and now the light rail is also kind of garbage. It breaks when it snows. It breaks when you hold it open. So half the time it works, half the time it doesn't. But they're improving it, and they're improving the transit in the city, and the city's growing pretty quickly, and it's a really spread out city. So the things I'm kind of looking for are, and what I also see a lot of clients, a lot of investors looking for is things along the future light rail planned areas. So wherever they're building the light rail, wherever it's planning to go, mainly because your rents are going to be a lot higher, and that's where the city's putting money into it. So really looking for, well, if it's land development within a few hundred meters of that new light rail going up, there can be a lot of distressed properties in the area. So if you can find good zoning, just getting the papers, flipping the papers, or going through with the construction. And then in terms of multis, just like, James was talking about, really just focusing on those areas. There's a few neighborhoods that are kind of really popping up just in terms of pricing, but just because the light rail is coming right through them. And that means you have better access. Your tenants have better access to get to their jobs, get to school, all that kind of stuff. So the rents are also seeing a pretty big increase, especially in those areas affected by transit, just because it's been such a detriment to the city for so long. So if anyone's looking at kind of getting into the market or has questions, if you focus along the LRT, it'll serve you really well.
Got it. Yeah, I appreciate that. And kind of what's going on these days with rents in Ottawa. Across Canada for the last couple of years, there's been a lot of pressure on rents and they've been going up dramatically. We've covered in previous stories on previous episodes, essentially just how aggressive some rents are going up in different parts of Canada. What's kind of like, and feel free to like pick a specific neighborhood, but like what's a 2-bed, 1-bath? What's kind of like, a single unit and a converted duplex? What kind of rents are you guys seeing, and any thoughts on the future? Do you expect to see, continued pressure on rents, or do you think it's going to plateau in the Ottawa market?
It's so, like, for example, let's say we take like a pretty nice neighborhood like Hintonburg. You could take Westboro, Hintonburg, even Sandy Hill. We're talking kind of like downtown. Same thing along the good transit way. These are the areas you have lots of students, you have lots of professionals. And this is where a lot of people are buying buildings. Your rents for around a 2-bed, 1-bath fixed up is going to be between 22 and 2,400. Rents have definitely gone up, but the areas surrounding Ottawa is where rents have actually skyrocketed because everyone that was living in Ottawa was like, well, you know what? Like, if the rents are so high, I'm just going to go to Carleton Place, which is 20 minutes outside of Canada, or I'm just going to go to Stittsville or Manotick because, well, my job's in, the South Keys, so I can drive there. So all the areas around Ottawa have absolutely exploded in rents. Brockville right now, you can get a 2-bed. They're starting around 1,800, and Brockville's only a city of about 30,000. And it's an hour away, but it's all being affected by the pressure coming out of Ottawa, just in terms of it's just kind of pricing everyone out. So we're seeing a lot of pressure on the outskirts, really.
Got it. And James, in some of these gentrifying neighborhoods, what sort of rents are you seeing?
Yeah, man. So, I mean, the demand is insane. I mean, you run your numbers and you're looking at a 2-bed, you're thinking about 1,800 bucks, and, you put it up, the demand is just so much that, you look at comparables around the area. It's like Matt said, these things are like sort of like Michael said, the demand is crazy, really. Essentially, you want to go and just kind of stay with market rents, and like, you're seeing $300-400 jumps in some of these areas that you thought would not be possible to achieve. So the demand is insane. It's just, I think it kind of maybe kind of goes with the rest of what's happening in the country, like supply and demand. It's just insane. So definitely huge plus in the rent gains.
Got it. Yeah, I appreciate that insight because, again, real estate so often is so locally oriented, right? That, someone in London or Toronto or Ottawa obviously are going to have vastly different experiences. Michael, I know you mentioned having a property in Gatineau that you were working on. What's kind of the difference? Because I know I've spoken to a few Ottawa investors, and whenever they're kind of giving me the lay of the land, often I get tempted by the idea of Gatineau because, at least historically speaking, prices were often a lot lower. It seemed very convenient to downtown Ottawa still. Although, like, it seems kind of strange. You guys need more bridges, if I understand your river correctly. But outside of that, when we're talking about Gatineau, what should an investor consider if they're looking to invest there?
Yeah, and just to clarify, sorry, my property is a bit past Montreal. Actually, it's like way out on the Quebec side.
Oh, okay.
But
My
I
bad.
have a lot of experience dealing with Gatineau. That's where we were going to buy our first one. Ended up going past that. So Quebec, despite the fact that it's like Ottawa, Gatineau, a lot of things are the same. Quebec's a completely different animal. Like the rent board is again, it's a different province, right? So that's something people have to understand. There is a stigma in Ottawa about buying in Gatineau. A lot of that comes from the referendum, well, the two referendums that's have happened in Canada, with the last one being so close. It was like 49%, almost. Like we basically almost became separate countries. So there's a lot of hesitation even in Ottawa for people to buy in Gatineau. That created a lot of opportunity because there weren't as many investors searching because you had these million people on the Ottawa border not going into Gatineau. So I know tons of investors that have bought in Gatineau, and Gatineau is actually the fastest growing city in Quebec. So prices have absolutely skyrocketed. It makes Ottawa look like slow growth, and we've had 60%, just like a lot of the rest of Ontario over the last 2-3 years. And rents have gone up a lot, but Gatineau is still a lot cheaper. So you're cheaper. The tenant rules are different. Some are a little better, some are a little worse. It's got pretty strict rent control. So let's say a tenant moves out, they're paying $1,000. Unless you can prove that you've done significant renovations, the new tenant that moves in, despite whatever the market rent is for the unit, can actually ask to pay what the previous tenant paid. And depending on how much renovations you put in, there's actually a calculator online on the actual federal website, or not federal website, but provincial website, that'll tell you approximately what the board will come in and set your new rent at. Now it can be higher than what you asked for the rent, but it could also just say, oh, that tenant was here for 5 years. Your new tenant's going to get the same rent too. So lots of nuances in the market, which is certain.
Got
But
it.
you can get great prices, and the rents are really, really good because so many people live in Gatineau and work in Ottawa. So you have a ton of great renters for sure.
Appreciate that insight. And I see we've got a few questions coming in from the comment section here. So Goldman asks, is it harder now to find cash flowing properties in Ottawa in comparison to a few years ago? If you guys don't mind, maybe describe for us what a good cash flowing deal looks like these days in Ottawa.
Yeah, so it's nothing. I mean, it might be harder, but it's not impossible, right? So again, if you go into a property where you could find that potential value, what are we doing here? We're gonna see if we can add a suite to it. We're gonna look at a property where we could add an extra unit into it. You got creative, right? We find properties that we have some of the essentially the bigger players that locked in longer rates, and you can assume those mortgages. And it's really creative. You could really find some good cash flowing properties in Ottawa. Gone are the cookie cut ways where you're going to buy something and just kind of go with a straight way of just locking it down and going to the bank. That's just not going to cut it in some of the other markets, in the secondary markets. But yeah, you can certainly find some cash flowing properties in Ottawa. Just got to be a little bit more creative to it.
Yeah, just to jump on there, James, absolutely. A few years ago, it may have been possible to find like an average sixplex on the market or off market, buy it, regular finance it, and see a little bit of cash flow. Again, Ottawa right now is around a 4 cap, sometimes a 4.5 cap. It's not a very, it's not like a very small market where you can get a really good capitalization. So your cash flow is pretty tight. What a lot of people do is they add other income sources, right? Whether you're going to rent out by the room, do a co-living situation. So that's something that I've seen a lot of people buy, just like you were saying, Matt, like duplex or bungalow conversions into duplexes. And then you actually just create mini bachelors in the basement. And then you may turn that into like 6 kind of unofficial units, but you get 6 really high quality, high paying tenants in there. Or adding a development in the back, a garden suite, a granny suite in the basement, Airbnb. That's kind of, like James said, you got to be creative if you're really looking to get something cash flowing. If you can't find what you're looking for, you may look to the outskirts, Carleton Place, Rockland, Cumberland. You could look all the way down to Brockville, Smiths Falls. There's lots of other areas that are supported by the market that you can find stuff which a little bit less work to get something cash flowing.
Awesome. Yeah, appreciate that, guys. I see we've got another question here. What tips and advice can you offer when buying multi-unit properties from a wholesaler? So I guess first of all, do you guys have much experience dealing with wholesalers? And if so, what sort of tips do you have for a newer investor who's interacting with a wholesaler?
Yeah. James, you want to go first?
I'll go ahead, man. Go on that one.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So yeah, for like if you're buying from a wholesaler, it really depends on, well, make sure that it fits your criteria. Ottawa is just like a lot of other places. The buildings can be really old and they can be really sketchy on the inside. So always bring through an inspector if you can. Obviously, if you're buying from a wholesaler, there's no like inspection condition that you're waiving or anything like that. But I'd recommend you bring in your inspector. If you have tradespeople that you work with, plumber, electrician, stuff like that, if you can, bring them through if there's any concerns that come up during the inspection. Again, time dependent, obviously, this is all time dependent. But really make sure that you can get those tradespeople through if you're not one yourself or you haven't walked hundreds and hundreds of properties and kind of know what you're going to expect. Because, especially in Ottawa, like it's tradespeople are really hard to come by, really hard to find. So if you run into a problem, it could be exorbitantly expensive. So you don't want to be buying other people's problems, right? We want to be making profits. So make sure that you kind of at least do that part, because Ottawa's a pretty old city. There's not a lot of new builds yet, as hopefully we'll find soon, but quite a bit of old stuff. So just bring your people through.
Yeah, I mean, just to add to that, I mean, it kind of comes down to your due diligence. You really have to make sure that you're not getting yourself into a situation where it's coming down to some of the basics of a due diligence to find, not only for a wholesaler, but any property that you think you want to kind of move forward with it. You just kind of make sure that your I's are dotted, your T's are crossed from your due diligence. You check to make sure that some of the things that you're looking for meeting your criteria, because last thing you want is get stuck with a property that's just bleeding from day one.
Yeah, appreciate that. And I think one other consideration just for anyone that's new to interacting with wholesalers is obviously, it's still your burden to do the due diligence. And so you can't just jump to conclusions and assume because they told you the ARV is $1 million that boom, the appraiser is going to agree with what your wholesaler told you. So you really do need to crunch your numbers. You can use that as initial jumping off point. They'll often put together like a prospectus or an outline of kind of their expectations, but it really is up to you as the individual investor. No one else is going to be your fiduciary here when it comes to this investment. So really make sure that you're going through it. As Michael was saying, if it's an older property, if you've got any concerns about structural issues or anything like that, again, go through it. Just because someone tells you that you can make it like a 12-unit apartment building there, you have to go and actually check the zoning yourself. So I think the key is not to become complacent when working with a wholesaler. As well, one other thing I will say is in markets that are very dynamic, and I think right now we're entering that moment in time where it's difficult to know whether to expect prices to plateau, whether prices are going to soften, whether prices will continue on a bull run. And again, it's always going to be very local when it comes to your real estate investing. But understand that in these kind of like dynamic, uncertain times, you probably have a little bit more power sometimes to push back on the wholesale fee or to maybe take a little bit more time than you would have when it was a very aggressive seller's market. So again, I think that that's an important consideration. But at the end of the day, just don't get emotional, right? And I've seen this whether it comes to bidding wars or dealing with a wholesaler. Oftentimes, newer investors will kind of panic and jump in without really looking what they're jumping into. All right. I'm just going to hit a couple more of these questions here. Can you still find cash flow positive properties in Guelph, Kitchener, or Waterloo area? So I'll answer this. And if you guys have any opinions, feel free to jump in. Certainly, it's not going to be like what it was back in 2016 when I started my YouTube channel. Markets are constantly evolving. And so with that, we as real estate investors just have to evolve as well. I think, is it possible to find cash flowing properties in those markets or just outside of them? Yes. In the area you've kind of outlined, I would probably be tempted to look maybe even a little bit more towards Cambridge. Historically speaking, usually Cambridge is a little bit lower in the price per unit range versus what you're going to find in a Guelph or Waterloo. Now, again, even understand when you're looking at properties there, right? These different cities have their own bylaws and their own rules. It's been a while since I really looked into Waterloo, Kitchener, but if I remember correctly, I think Waterloo has probably some of the tightest restrictions in that region when it comes to being a landlord. So again, make sure you're going into that eyes wide open. Local investors or local realtors that deal with investors should be able to give you kind of an outline, or you can just go to the city website and jump in there and do your own research in that regards. But I think it's possible. I don't think you're probably going to find an off-the-shelf property, though, that cash flows in this market at the current rates. So you're going to be looking at a property where you're going to have to do some sort of value add, or like the guys were describing when it comes to Ottawa, you're maybe going to have to get creative, right? And look at that single family, whether you can convert it to a duplex. Maybe there's a detached garage that you can rent out separately. Again, looking at all those different things, you can oftentimes take a property that's maybe break even and eke out a little bit of cash flow on it. But again, it's really going to come down to knowing your numbers and making sure that you're not kidding yourself on anything like that either. Now, this is kind of an interesting question, and I'd love for you guys to answer it if you want to. If not, I'm happy to jump in. But can an expert define best time to buy a property?
Yeah, man, I think I can try that, and I'll hear you guys' opinion. So, the best time to buy property, there's that saying that we all hear, the best time was to buy yesterday, and the next best time is today. So, in my opinion, there's no best time to buy a property. I think when the opportunity presents itself is when you really can go ahead and take that opportunity. We're in a market now where things obviously are getting more challenging for investors and people to find anything that makes sense at this point in time. But an opportunity can present itself where you're going to find a seller that, again, is on the verge of doesn't want to, maybe take on the next mortgage, or just a tired landlord. Opportunities just come from nowhere, and it comes down to, what are you willing to find out there? Put the work in, and an opportunity can present itself. It doesn't necessarily say I'm going to sit back, wait till the market gets, better or softer. It's now. It's the opportunity when it arises. Just take the opportunity when it shows your way. So yeah, there's really no best time in my opinion.
Yeah, I got a little quote. There's never a good time to open a bad business, and there's always a good time to open. Basically, if you're not going to be a good investor, the market could be the best market you could ever have, and you could still probably lose money. It could be a really bad market, and I've seen fantastic investors make millions of dollars. So if you are in a position that you're knowledgeable enough to take advantage of the current market situations, because there's always going to be benefits to every market and downsides to every market. Right now, sellers are nervous. Buyers are hesitating to buy because interest rates are on the rise. There's plenty of opportunity out there. It may not look like 2008. It may not look like 2016, kind of like what Matt was saying, where you could just find cash flowing properties kind of from the get-go. But if you're educated enough and you have the people around you to do it, there's always going to be opportunity for you. So absolutely, it's always a good time to buy if you're ready.
Yeah, appreciate that insight, guys. And I guess one thing I'll add here, and this also goes for, dealing with a wholesaler, is understand with real estate investing, it's a contact sport, right? So the more opportunities you come in contact with, the more likely you're going to find a good opportunity.
Absolutely.
And I think far too often people are too passive when they decide to become a real estate investor, and they decide if the perfect deal doesn't come up on the MLS, it's not the right time for me to invest. And yet understand that there's a lot of capital out there. There's a lot of investors and aspiring investors out there competing with you. So I think you need to take a very proactive position. Now, as far as I understand where this question's coming from often, and people are usually, what they mean by that question is will properties get cheaper, right? I don't want to buy at the top. And I certainly can empathize with that, because I've been there, right? As a real estate investor, back when I started buying, I bought my very first property in 2010. And at that time, people told me the market was going to crash, right? Because the Canadian real estate market hadn't corrected nearly as drastically as what the American market had back in 07 to 09. And so I remember being very nervous about that. And so because I felt a high degree of uncertainty, I was only focused on properties that would cash flow aggressively. So for us, what that looked like was buying student rental properties in London, Ontario, near Fanshawe College. Usually there were 6 bedrooms. They were often cash flowing $500 plus a month. And again, sometimes we could even get higher with that, assuming the students didn't trash the property too much. And with that sort of outline, that gave me the confidence to get into those deals, because I was like, okay, well, worst case scenario, maybe we only rent out 5 bedrooms instead of 6, but I'll still be able to break even or eke out a little bit of cash flow. If I can only rent out 4, maybe I'll have to go move in with the students or whatever. But it was really for me having as many like plan B, plan C's as possible, or opportunities to pivot when it came to my real estate investing. So one of the mistakes I see a lot of investors make right now when we're in kind of like high demand markets or when supply is kind of tight is they compromise on their underlying principles or their thesis as an investor. And I really don't think this is the time to do that because there is a lot of uncertainty in the market. Will interest rates go higher? I think there's a strong chance they could, but I also wouldn't be shocked to see them go lower, right? I think that, we need to really be paying attention to the macro environment right now as investors, particularly if the interest rates make or break your deals. And so, make sure whatever sort of products you're getting in regards to your borrowing or your mortgages are in alignment with your actual investment thesis. So, when I first started investing, we were all about trying to get the absolute cheapest rate. We didn't care about breaking fees. We didn't really think about anything else. We just wanted to try and get the lowest rate because that sounded good. But actually, as an experienced investor, there's often other considerations that need to be taken in when it comes to, your interest rate or the right mortgage product. And I think the same still going to hold here when it comes to like, when's the best time to buy a property? I don't think that you need to panic and rush into a property right now, but I also know people that have been sitting on the sidelines since I started investing in 2010, and they're still waiting for the market to correct. I'm much happier that I took action. And, for the last 10 plus years, I had my money working for me versus just waiting on the sidelines. So if you don't think that right now is the right time for you to invest, you can still like invest in yourself, right? So you can actively learn, consume, like there's literally 1,500 plus videos now on this YouTube channel. You can binge them all for free. There's lots of like cheap courses out there. There's lots of different books that you can read as well. So just make sure that even if you're not ready to take the leap and become a real estate investor, start proactively investing in yourself and your education, as well as get out there and network. I think that that's one of the biggest mistakes I consistently see aspiring investors make is they decide that I'm not going to go and start networking until I own a property. And that's honestly the exact backwards approach, in my opinion, because when you first go to a networking event, particularly if you've never earned a property or owned a property before, everything you learn is new and like huge. And so like what ends up happening actually is like once you've been in this for 10 years and you go to that networking event, you're actually going to get significantly diminishing returns on your time versus when you're brand new to this. So I think that right now is a great time to be out there networking, meeting fellow investors, getting connected, build out that Rolodex, and that will honestly help you with confidence as well. And don't be afraid to ask advice, right? A lot of real estate investors are very passionate about real estate investing. Their spouse, their friends, they're sick of hearing them talk about real estate. So when they get around other real estate investors, they're more than happy to look over your numbers, give a second opinion, challenge you maybe on some of your investment theses. So again, just want to encourage you guys, don't just sit on the sidelines because you think the market might crash. But at the same time, don't just blindly jump in because it's been going up essentially for the last 10 years either. Anything else now that I'm done that monologue, guys, or do you want to hit more questions?
Actually, just something you said was really good, and it relates back to that question: is it the right time to buy? It depends on how you're buying, and Matt kind of nailed it. It's like, well, we're in uncertain times. Matt was being told all around him, like, look, the market's going to crash. We didn't correct, so obviously the market's coming down. And Matt's like, okay, well, I'll make a strategy kind of around it. And maybe I'm just kind of guessing here, Matt, but it kind of sounds like the strategy you had kind of hedged against a possibility of a market downturn. Let's cash flow $500-600 a month of property. And you're not just having one person rent the property where if they lose their job, you're 100% vacant. You have 6+ bedrooms. So even if one leaves, you're okay. So you kind of hedged against it just by how you're buying. I wouldn't be flipping in this market, but I'll always be buying multifamily. That's just like, there's a time and place for it, but like, would I be flipping right now? Maybe not, but there's always.
Yeah, man, that's a good way you guys put it too, man. Another thing I can also add right now is, again, a lot of people, what scares you is what they're seeing and what they're reading on the news. All these interest rates are coming in and they're like kind of putting everybody on the sideline. So, one thing that we learned this past weekend in a boot camp they attended was like, look at it and from a perspective of, marry the price and date the rate. Because what happens is the rates always change at every single time here and there. We're going to go through ups and downturns at this moment in time. And like you said, a good skill set right now is just to kind of hone in on what can make you a better investor. If you feel you're not ready to jump into the market now, then that's fine. Take some actionable steps, go out there, get knowledgeable, do some walkthroughs, look at some properties, get out there, just, build that digital asset perspective. And that way you can actually start getting into the space that you want to be at, be knowledgeable, right? So that when an opportunity comes, or when you feel you're right to kind of get into the market, at that point, you'll be a little bit further ahead than where you are. So I really think it's being proactive in times like this. So absolutely.
Yeah, appreciate that. And so I see we've got a few more questions I'm going to hit here. So this one's from DA. Hey, Matt, for a property investor starting out, what type of property should I aim for, i.e. a duplex or a student townhouse condo where you can rent $700 a room? I'm in London, FYI. So I think, DA, the first thing here is understanding what you're trying to accomplish as an investor, right? So, I've always been a big proponent of cash flow. It's my favorite thing. Again, often because I'm just risk adverse in general, CPA accounted by background. So that really shouldn't surprise anyone. But, typically when I see someone deciding to get started in real estate investing, there's a handful of reasons they've decided to do that. And it's nice to kind of hone in on what's the primary goal here. So one is like, I want to quit my day job. So usually what that means is you're either going to want to like build a job for yourself in real estate investing, or for most people, they want to build up enough passive income that they're able to quit their main job. Alternatively, though, sometimes people want to make essentially a lump sum of money, right? And so sometimes that's, we want to buy a cottage, we want to buy our dream car, we want to help out our parents with their retirement, I want to help out my kids with the university. And oftentimes like a trickle of cash flow isn't actually going to help you accomplish that. So oftentimes then looking towards wholesaling or flipping will be a more attractive investment strategy. So first, I would hone in on like what's the right investment strategy for your goals. And if you haven't spent any time doing that, you can go to mattmckeever.com and there's a bunch of free ebooks there that you can just check out. The download button's broken. I don't know why, but anyways, you can still read them for free on the website. And one of the books there is Discover Your Why. And so there's a great exercise that was popularized by Dean Graziosi, but I think originally Joe Stump came up with it. But essentially, it's just this concept of asking yourself the question why 7 times. And so oftentimes what happens when I did this with like real estate investors, the first question is like, why do you want to be a real estate investor? And usually their answer is, I want to get rich. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's not actually a really good reason to become an investor, believe it or not. So usually what we do is then, well, why is becoming rich important to you? And they would oftentimes say something like, I'll just use like a common avatar here, but well, growing up, we didn't have a lot of money and I don't want to live the life my parents lived. Okay, well, why is that important to you? Well, because they were always working overtime or working 2 jobs and they didn't get to spend as much time with us kids. And so I want to spend more time with my kids. Well, why spending more time with your kids important? And once we start to get to an emotional core, right, or really an emotional reason for you to become an investor, it's so much easier to then take any goal and tether it to that emotion, in my opinion. And it becomes so much easier for people to gain clarity on what's the right path forward. So I'd really encourage you to do that. But I also don't want you to think that I'm just trying to avoid your question. So, you're in London, Ontario. I'm going to operate under the assumption you're looking for cash flow because you're focused on $700 a room in regards to rent. Well, first thing I'm going to tell you is like even like a 2-bedroom apartment these days will often be renting for more than $1,400 in this market. So you're already at $700 a month in rent. In fact, I think that student rentals probably there's not too many outside of, very recently renovated with maybe ensuite bathrooms that are going to garner more than $700 a month in rent. So that may not even be the right fit for you. One other little perspective here is you mentioned townhouse condos. Just make sure that you understand any of the bylaws around that condo building, because oftentimes they may have restrictions or covenants when it comes to being able to use that unit as a rental, particularly if you're looking to rent it out by the room to students. Now, also London, Ontario does have rental licensing. So again, you're going to want to spend a little bit of time, just brush up on that, or talk to a realtor that works with investors, or talk to a local investor just to make sure you understand, because like technically London doesn't like it when you have separate leases for the same unit. So like you're not really supposed to, or essentially you're not allowed to rent it out by the bedroom. Now, again, you can do group leases. And it's just a matter of understanding the nuances around it. But again, make sure you spend a little bit of time and just brush up on that before jumping into it. If there's anything you guys want to add on that, feel free to. Otherwise, we can keep rolling here.
All good. Yeah.
All right. So we've got another question. Working my way through the last real estate course. I'm not sure what course, but I'm glad to hear you're investing in yourself. Any advice or suggestions for the first month starting out? So I'll maybe go first here, and then I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on this. So I'm going to operate under the assumption you own no properties. You're probably starting day zero here. Maybe you've invested a little bit. You've done a couple courses. I think the first thing is like I said earlier, real estate's a contact sport. So the first 30 days, I would literally just try and come in contact with as many people as possible, build out my Rolodex as much as possible. And the way I would go about that is like go to meetup.com, go to Eventbrite, go to like search on Facebook, search on Kijiji, and just find out if there's any real estate networking events in your area. There's a good chance that there's probably a bunch of free ones, maybe some with token payments. There's probably very expensive courses as well. I was always very frugal, so I would start off with the free ones, go there first. Now, again, sometimes they're going to be seminars trying to sell you shit, but again, it's not even necessarily about networking with the gurus there. It's about just like rubbing shoulders with other investors, because you'll bump into a single mom that's just got one, duplex that she rents. And you'll bump into an old married couple that have built up a real estate empire that just like to go there for the free coffee or whatever it is. But you can actually meet a fantastic amount of people at these networking events. Beyond that, I would really focus on trying to build a relationship with a local wholesaler or local wholesalers, as well as with local realtors. And one of the things I would do that you can start day one as well, presumably you're starting off with some sort of investment thesis, some sort of goal, start running numbers. So one of the big things I used to recommend to people was the idea of like, I would want to run 100 numbers or like 100 properties before I ever bought one. And that you can do that for free, right? You can go on the MLS, grab some information from it, fill in your spreadsheet. If you don't have a spreadsheet, build out a simple template. Don't be intimidated by like Google Sheets or Microsoft Excel, but start running the numbers, and you'll start to realize that oftentimes those realtor listings don't have all the information you need. But then you can reach out to either investors you've met or contact those realtors and ask them for additional information. And eventually what'll happen is you'll start to really understand your local market, right? So back like in 2010, when I got involved in student rentals, after looking at a handful of them, we understood like Union Gas was probably never going to cost you more than $250 or $300 a month to heat that 6-bedroom house. Electricity was probably never going to top even $400 or $500 at that time, even if the students had thousands of devices going on. And what that allows you to do is just, oftentimes when we start off as investors, you've got this giant range where you're just like, I don't know anything. Well, let's hone in first and start to understand the rent side of the equation, right? So like a student rental probably is renting out on average somewhere between $400 and $700 a month per bedroom in the London area, depending upon the accommodations, the location, all those different factors. Well, all of a sudden now I can start to grasp or understand what that market looks like, right? And now I understand that, well, if my expenses exceed that, this is not going to be a cash flowing property. So either can I pull or push on one of those levers? Can I reduce expenses or increase rent? If the answer is no, well, again, a lot of investors look at it as like wasted time to do that due diligence. But in my opinion, that's just all part of the educational experience. So again, in those first 30 days, at a minimum, I would try and meet at least 30 people in my market. And again, this is if you're being aggressive, but why not be aggressive? I try and meet at least 30 people, whether those are realtors, wholesalers, fellow investors, as well as run the numbers on at least 30 properties as well. And again, sometimes you won't be able to get all the details on those properties. Use your best guess, right? So right now, if you're renting out a 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment to live in, and it costs you $200 a month in electricity, well, I would just assume that probably most 2-bedrooms cost $200 a month in electricity until I got more information to allow me to hone in on the details around that. So again, I would just be very proactive. And again, don't worry about finding the perfect deal in those first 30 days. Maybe you'll stumble into it. Fantastic. Pull the trigger if you've done your due diligence. But otherwise, just constantly be going through the motions, right? Like this to me is like going to practice if you're in sports or a game or whatever the case may be. But yeah, James and Michael, first 30 days as an investor, what would you guys recommend to people? What would you do personally?
Yeah, man. I had like 30 points. You just knocked every single one of them right out of a box, man. But Anyway, no, one thing I could say that you might not have said was in the first 30 days is I like to, and a lot of people can get in a situation where they get into this paralysis analysis, right? The first 30 days they've been reading all that kind of stuff and they feel they want to read more and they read more. Next thing you know, you get caught up and caught up and caught up and you just want to keep reading. What I would recommend is just read what you can, get the first 30 days in and go out there, take those actionable steps, go out there, look at some properties, walk properties. You might not be ready to buy them, but this is going to give you that actual visibility to actually see what it takes, going out and looking at, a boiler room, looking at meters, looking at windows, like all those CapEx items. It makes a huge difference. Now you're starting to build your muscle memory at that point in time. Now you're getting just more familiar with what, what these things, what the properties look for, what they look at, what the numbers make sense. Even if you might not be able to go ahead and buy it, but at least you're building that muscle memory at that point in time. And another thing is, I'm not a big fan of putting a timeline to things, right? As an investor, you're starting out. I want to cap it. I want to say in 30 days, I want to make sure I get this done. Just go day by day, read it, take an action, read it, take an action. And it's just going to realize, man, what you can achieve in a short period of time is going to be beyond. So putting a time limit, I'm not a big fan. I just like to go organic and just take the next step and take action. Next thing you realize, man, you just, compare yourself to where you are and like, you'll be blown away by what you've achieved in, not even 30, but even 40 days or 60 days. So I like to just kind of move forward and just, not limit myself to anything because, you can achieve a lot more in less than 30 days or even less. But the goal is to actually just be moving forward and landing a thing or two every single day.
I mean, I can jump in here. Yeah, you got to walk properties. You got to do the numbers. And the other thing about doing the numbers is you get a lot faster at doing them. You'll learn here. You'll hear things like the 1% rule, the 2% rule, 50% expenses. Like you get fast at underwriting a property. You're going to look at a house and maybe the house is like $900,000 because you picked an expensive neighborhood in Ottawa to look at, for example. And that a house can't rent for more than $3,000. Off the top, you probably know you're going to be losing a lot of money every month because the numbers don't add up or even close. So I probably analyzed around 500 properties in different markets before I even put an offer in. You don't have to do that. You don't have to wait that long, but it took that long to find one that fit the criteria, which is fine. And also understand your market. You got to know who, if you're going to be talking to investors, if you're going to be using other people's money, and it's an investment that you're buying yourself, you got to understand the economic factors. You should also connect with property managers. Who's going to manage the property for you? Who's going to be doing the inspection? Who's going to be doing all these different things? So just like Matt said, you got to connect with tons of investors, figure out how to get contacts, provide value to other investors so that they're open and willing and excited to share with you all these kind of things. But just be out there. Yeah, go to meetups, go to walkthroughs, talk to lenders, talk to mortgage brokers, talk to realtors, be in the game, go to practice. You don't just show up and decide I'm going to buy a property today. You show up months before and you start working it. That's it.
Yeah, great advice, guys. And I see, again, that was all fantastic advice, but I see they've specified a little bit further here. So I meant as a realtor. So let's maybe touch upon that briefly. Your first 30 days as a realtor, how would you guys go about approaching that?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, I've just been a realtor for 7 months, so I can touch on that. Build your database. That's all you have to do. You have to build a list of everyone you know and tell them you're a realtor. Follow up with them, provide them lots of value. Don't be a sleazy salesman. People can feel, they can hear, and they can smell a salesman from miles away. But you have to let everyone know that you're a realtor. It's a people game. You don't get into real estate because you like houses and you like duplexes. It's because you like people. So people also have to like you back if they want to do business with you. People do business with those they know, like, and trust. And that's what you have to do. You have to get people to know you. You have to get people to like you, and you have to get people to trust you. So you figure out the first one is know. So how are people going to know you? That's what you work on. You call people you know. Maybe you make some videos, door knocking, but really talk with your broker, talk with your team leader, whoever, and just start figuring out how you get your name out there and how you start becoming a recognizable, trustworthy person in the industry and market yourself as an expert.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I think the one thing that I'll add here is I often see newer realtors, people that just become realtors, and they have this perspective that they can show no weakness. And so they need to like bluff or pretend like they know everything. I personally would take the exact opposite approach. I'm sure that that works for some people, but personally, I think that owning the situation is so much better and being proactive. So let's say that, you know, you're a brand new realtor, you're showing a property around, and someone asks you a nuanced question about Airbnb. I wouldn't just lie and be like, oh, yeah, you can definitely turn this into an Airbnb. I'd be like, that's a great question. I know that we've got some rules around this. I'm going to dig deep into this, and I'll get back to you in 24 hours or 48 hours with the answer. And again, use all those opportunities not to try and like bluff your way through it, but to just jump in and start doing the research. And what you'll find is, honestly, after you've fielded a couple hundred questions, you'll probably fielded like 99% of the questions that you're likely to encounter there. And so, again, oftentimes you can start off with just your own curiosity. One other thing is trying to be everything to everyone. I definitely know realtors that are able to be successful in that. But I personally, if I was a realtor, and again, people often think I am, I've never been a realtor, but I would focus in on niche. You know, I'm naturally inclined to enjoy and be interested about real estate investing. So I would probably focus on the niche of like working with and dealing with investors. You know, that's not going to work so well if I want to also then be selling new build construction, right? Because oftentimes that's much more relationship oriented with the developers, right? Whether that's through like your team or building a direct relationship with smaller developers and home builders. So again, understand what niche are you trying to like provide a solution to, and I would focus on that. Now, again, if you're a new realtor and the opportunity comes to sell something outside of your niche, I wouldn't turn that down either, because again, it can be a great learning experience. But I think the key is just like to own the situation. And if you plan on being a realtor for a long time and you want to be successful as a realtor, I would strongly encourage you to document the process. I think far too often people underestimate the value of social media. And what they do is they underestimate it because they look for immediate feedback. And so if I can't get immediate feedback, like in the first video, the first month of videos, the first whatever, I'm going to give up and move on with it, because that's what 99% of people do. However, if you know that you're going to be a realtor for 10 years, imagine the power of having videos out there from 10 years ago. You don't have to look like an expert in those videos, but you can just pick a random topic and build it out, right? Hey, a client asked me about Airbnbs today. So I'm going to go through and show you how to check out on the city's website, how to figure out how to fill out the application, whatever the case may be. And that'll be there forever, right? So if someone Googles London, Ontario, Airbnbs, they're going to find me first in the search results. So I would strongly encourage you, again, if you're taking it seriously, like take it seriously, document the process, get out there. And yeah, it's definitely a contact sport as a realtor as well, but don't do the like just exchanging business cards thing. I personally find that so superficial. You know, really try and understand, like, it's much better to build 10 deep relationships, because those deep relationships will actually result in a referral, versus being like, oh, I shook 100 hands tonight. I don't remember a single name, but I've got 100 business cards of strangers here that I'm never going to call. They're never going to call me. And I'll go do the same thing a month from now at the next networking event. I would really encourage you, focus on building those deep relationships first. Secondly, once you get a little bit more confidence, I'm a big fan of Gary Vee. And one of things he regularly talks about is the high school party principle. And so what this is you don't have to be the coolest. You don't have to be the most attractive. You don't have to be the funniest person in high school. If you're the one hosting the party, everyone still wants to know you. And so that works as well as a realtor. Be the one that hosts the networking event, right? Be the one that's willing to go the extra mile and go to everyone else's networking event and bring a friend to someone else's networking event. All those small things really do make a big difference, particularly if you're willing to do this over an extended period of time. So again, just strongly encourage you guys, be proactive with this stuff, especially if you're a realtor. There's a lot of realtors out there, and there's a lot of really bad realtors out there, in my opinion. So it's not that hard to distinguish yourself, but it is going to take effort.
Yeah, I can actually jump in on that, Matt, because I think everything you said there absolutely resonates. In my first day, I was touring like big commercial properties, and I knew nothing about the rules. And people asked me, they're like, "Oh, what do you do about this? What do you do about this?" And if I had bullshitted them, I probably would have lost them as a client. And I'm also not doing my responsibilities as a realtor. And you literally, exactly how you say it, you just say, "Look, I think that's a great question. I'm going to go find out." And when you say that, you're not actually showing them that you don't know everything and that you're not an expert. You're showing them that you're a true expert, because when you don't know something, you can find out. And then you take the time to do the proper research. And I found that every time I do that, people show immense gratitude, because a lot of times in life, you'll ask someone something and they'll bullshit their way through an answer. And you know that, like, you kind of feel it on the other end, versus someone actually going back, oh, actually, I don't know. I've never been asked that. Let me go find out. And they find out, they give you the right answer. You just have a lot more trust and a lot more respect in that relationship. And that's the entire job of a realtor, is to bring trust to real estate. And you have fiduciary responsibilities. So if you're not doing that, well, then you could be open to litigation and all that kind of stuff. Like, it's super evident. So if you try to do that, don't. Just try to do it the right way. And absolutely document the process. I went to a networking event with investors that I haven't been in contact with in over a year, but I've been making almost a video every day, just documenting what I've been doing. Oh, I got a question about mortgages. This is what's going on with mortgages. This is this, this is this. And when I went to the event, I didn't have to introduce myself to anyone. Everyone walked up to me, shook my hand. Oh, you're the guy that makes the videos. I've seen your videos. Oh man, that video is awesome. It's crazy. Like, and you don't get a lot of views, and you don't get a lot of likes on them or a lot of engagement, because you haven't been doing them for years and years like Matt has. But it's that effect that you walk into a room and all of a sudden everyone knows you, because their feed's been getting blasted with your good quality content, not your bad content, but your good stuff. Like, you make good stuff, you improve on it, and people see it, and it makes a difference.
Yeah, man. Just to add to that, man. I mean, I'm not a realtor by any means, but just from what you guys are saying, I can relate, because that also works out as an investor, right? If you come as authentic, you can just provide value to these people. You're not BSing them. You're not doing this. You're authentically somebody who is providing value. They can actually see that from the get-go. At that point in time, now you become the expert, and you're actually attracting capital at this point in time. Those are the people that want to invest in you, because at the end of the day, as an investor, potential investors are actually looking to invest in you, the person, because they can see right through you. They can know your character, the person that you are, the authenticity that you bring, how real as it gets, whether you know it or not. You can just tell them exactly what it is. So being authentic really carries along. And to the points that you guys have said, it comes down to an investor as well. Once you have those characters and that the person who you are as an investor, at that point, people actually try to be, they'll get to like you and trust you, and they'll invest with you from a real estate investing perspective.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I appreciate that, guys. And I think we'll have this be our last question here. What are your thoughts on seeking pricing mentorship to get active about investing, especially when they have full-time job to perform? So I'm going to assume that means, like, if you've got a full-time job, but you're looking to become a real estate investor, should you pay for pricing mentorship? And I'm going to answer first, because this is a subject matter I've got a full spectrum of thoughts on. So when I first started real estate investing, the way I was able to afford my first property was through frugality. So I was very focused on pinching pennies, not looking to, pay anyone to do anything, only go to free networking events, things of that nature. And I got immense value from it. But I think that what it honestly comes down to is knowing yourself and knowing your personal situation. Now, if yesterday you decided you wanted to become a real estate investor, I don't think it's wise to go out and pay the first person you met a bunch of money to be your mentor or a guru or whatever the case may be. I would first start off with, like, buying a couple books, buying small commitment price points, getting some perspective there. But honestly, it's so personal. I know people that have built giant, decamillionaires that have never once paid for any education. And I know people that have dropped millions of dollars in education and also done very well for themselves from a real estate investing perspective. I think what it really comes down to is, and as bizarre as it sounds, if you want to be a successful real estate investor, you're going to have to sacrifice something. So that maybe will be sacrificing a bunch of time and energy and self-study, right? Or that maybe will be sacrificing and putting up a bunch of money on the line to a mentor or guru or someone that's going to kind of hold your hand through the process. The way I personally view it is, like, this is the 21st century. It's the information age. Literally anything and everything you want can be found for free online. But the question is, how patient are you? How willing are you to kind of filter through all that information to try and find the answers? And for a lot of people, they would rather pay a premium to have a curated experience. And that's kind of my view when it comes to content, right? I don't think that, like, for a lot of people, if they were to get on a one-on-one call with me, they might get like 1 or 2 gems out of the call because, like, maybe I've just somehow never covered that in the previous 1,500 videos. But odds are I probably covered it somewhere on this YouTube channel. But the question is, are you willing to spend the time and energy to go through it? And again, such a personal decision. I think that there's some fantastic people out there that really have a passion for teaching, that have the experience, that are capable of educating people, and they're worth every penny. I also know that there's a lot of fly-by-night gurus that essentially really view making money through coaching or teaching or education as their primary income and aren't very active necessarily as an investor. Again, it's so dependent upon your personal situation, but I've seen a lot of people also waste a lot of money, and I've seen people like hire the right coach but not at the right time, or I've seen people pay people that I know are capable of educating them, but they're still not willing to put in the work. So I think it honestly comes down to just being brutally honest with yourself, and if you're unsure about it, I would really start with some books first. And again, if you want to save money, you can probably find those books online. You can go to your local library and get them as well. For anyone that's brand new, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, The Wealthy Barber, I think those are great introductions to the basic principles of real estate investing. If you've never, Think and Grow Rich, all those kind of personal development books are fantastic. If you've never been exposed to any of these ideas or concepts, I think it would do you well to first get exposed to those, whether that's binging a bunch of YouTube video summaries, whether that's reading the books direct. It doesn't really matter. But once you've got a base, then you can decide, like, do I prefer to learn through the School of Hard Knocks, or would I rather have a curated experience? I think that for individuals that know themselves and are willing to go down the mentorship or the expert path, you can definitely speed up your education and your experience level and probably grow your portfolio faster. But there is a lot of other people that they pay a guru or mentor and they think that somehow magically they're going to give them the one silver bullet that's going to make this all easy. And that's not the case, right? Anything that's worth having is worth, like, working for or worth doing. And so again, regardless of whether you go through the School of Hard Knocks or you have a more curated paid experience, it's going to come down to you at the end of the day. For some people, again, as weird as it sounds, sacrificing a bunch of money, paying someone, that's the moment they decide to get serious, because all of a sudden their ego gets involved and they're like, well, I can't let my parents, I can't let my spouse, I can't let my kids think that I just wasted $5,000, $10,000, $20,000, whatever it happens to be. Maybe it's only $500 for a one-day seminar, but whatever it is for them, that moment is like the moment that they've crossed the Rubicon and there's no turning back. For others, it maybe is as simple as like saying it out loud to your friends and family that you're going to read a book a month or a book a week on real estate investing until you become a successful investor. So again, I think it's a very personal decision. It's not a one size fits all answer, but I'd love to hear from both of you guys. What's your take on this?
Yeah, man. So, no, like you said, Matt, I think this is personal. And to me personally, what I found was working for me was obviously, I started off with YouTube University. I was on YouTube. I studied as much as possible. I was looking into it. And you just keep on growing. And I just felt, what I was missing just to kind of elevate my whole knowledge and game here was just to be in membership with groups of people in a community, right? And I ended up realizing that I'm paying for this mentorship or this course. Why? Because I'm just paying to be part of this community. I'm not just paying it for a course, but I want to be into the spaces that I want to be into. The networking essentially kind of goes back to the networking aspect. You could go network, which is places for free, but these were more like organized networking events, just being part of a community, being part of a membership, being part of what they're doing and seeing what's going on with that perspective. So I'm just I was paying to get into these rooms where I can actually see what's happening, what are these guys doing, and I just found that was something that was personally working best for me. Sometimes it takes just to pay that extra to get in these rooms, and that's what I thought was really great. From what I've learned is you never stop growing. I know mentors and members who are actually paying, hundreds of thousands that we look up to, they're still taking coaching, they're still taking mentorships. Why? Because they think that's what works for them as well. So I believe in always growing. Sometimes if it takes to be, paying to be part of these rooms to be in, then so be it. And that's what I find has really worked great for me to be part of some of these the membership groups that I'm part of.
Yeah, appreciate that. Michael?
Yeah, I had a hard time when I first got into real estate justifying a $6 book purchase to buy Rich Dad Poor Dad. It went a long way from there. I went that, got seminars, and got coaching. But I completely agree, Matt. It's a completely personal experience. If you know you can spend the time and effort and go through, just like James said, YouTube University. I've been there. It wasn't exactly for me, and not saying it isn't for you. But some people prefer to learn and can do better learning in the school of hard knocks, getting beat down, getting built up again, getting beat down, getting built up again. And no matter what you do, you don't get away from that. Hiring someone won't really give you the secret key because there is none. There is no just do this one thing and it'll solve all your problems. All it does is give you quicker responses to your answers in a curated experience, kind of like what you said. What I found mentorship gives you is really a accountability, because you have a lot of money online and your ego. YouTube doesn't really do that. Books don't really do that unless you can commit that to yourself. That's something I had a hard time doing myself, is saying I want to do this, and then it's like, but it's so early, I want to go back to bed. So I'm going to go back to bed. So when you're paying for mentorship and coaching, right, like if you've ever been in sports or anything, like you go to practice, you do practice, they tell you work on this, or in music they're like work on this piece of music, and you go home, you're like, I don't really want to work on that. And you have two options: you can work on it, you can get back there and you've done it, or if you don't work on it, you're going to get back there and they're going to be kind of razzing you the whole time because you don't know how to play the piece. That's kind of what paid mentorship does. But if you don't need that kind of help, you can absolutely learn everything through books, through media. All the information's out there. You're not going to learn any secrets, in my opinion, because all the information is documented somewhere. Just like Matt said, do you have the time and do you have the patience and ability to find it? That's really what it is. But if you hit a roadblock, I always believe in hiring experts to kind of help solve that for you. Always, whether it's business or personal. Like, if I don't know how to do taxes, I'm going to pay a tax accountant. That's always my belief.
Yeah, appreciate that, guys, and appreciate you guys spending your Wednesday night hanging out with us talking about real estate investing. Before we wrap up here, James and Michael, if people want to reach out to you, find you online, can they? And what's the best way to do so?
Yeah, man. So I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. James Rukundo, company. I'm a co-founder and CEO of Rukundo Investments. I'm all over socials. So yeah, happy to connect with anybody that found value and just you want to learn and chat real estate. Like Matt said, man, I'd love to dive into that and just share what I've learned along the journey. So yeah, you can find me on all those socials.
I'm best on Instagram, but I'm on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, Be Real, LinkedIn. I'm everywhere. So trying to post every day. But if you want to follow me, really, Instagram is the best place. I got most of the content there. Love to connect.
Awesome. Well, again, appreciate it, guys. We'll see you next Wednesday. Let me know if you've got any questions in the comment section. And again, just appreciate you guys hanging out with me. We'd love to get to 100,000 subs on this YouTube channel. So if you haven't subbed yet, please do hit that subscribe button. If you enjoy these videos, smash the like button. Let us know if there's other people you'd like to see on the channel future. If you guys would like to be on this channel on the live stream in the future, hit me up. I'm posting every single week on my Matt McKeever, I think it's Matt McKeever 85 Instagram account. You can just DM, respond to one of the stories I usually post on Monday or Tuesday, looking for a handful of guests to join us here. And yeah, just appreciate everyone hanging out with us. Have a great Wednesday night.